Hello and welcome to Week in Review with me, Sophie Ridge. Kevin Maguire and Andrew Pearce are here to discuss the biggest stories of the week. Well, we'll get down to business in a minute, but first let's have a look back at what the week was all about. France mourned the dead following another attack. Dozens were killed when a lorry ploughed into crowds in Nice. People ran for their lives as the attacker mounted the pavement, driving at full speed, swerving to hit revellers. Brexit Britain has a new Prime Minister. Theresa May promised unity outside Number 10.
We will do everything we can to give you more control over your lives.
As her predecessor claimed, every dog or cat has its day.
I was the future once. Very nice to see you this morning.
There were shocks in the cabinet as big beasts lost their jobs, and new blood was promoted. Another Labour contender joined the race, but Jeremy Corbyn will be on the ticket, even without the support of his MPs. Bernie Sanders gave his backing to Hillary Clinton in the presidential race.
Oh, you like that, huh?
And a man in Florida is refusing to give up his pet alligator after being told it's grown too big. The man's had 13-foot-long Gwendolyn since he was 9 years old. Well, first to that attack in France. Many people are dead, including a number of children, after a man drove into crowds celebrating the country's National Day. Witnesses have described how the truck travelled for more than a mile, zigzagging to hit families who were watching a fireworks display.
A lorry arrived and smashed into everyone. There was no security. It took the firemen 25 minutes or half an hour to arrive. We were working there on the promenade. Afterwards, there were shots and everything.
Yet another attack in France, and the question has to be asked. Do you think the authorities are doing enough?
Well, how do you legislate to stop a madman in a big lorry? But there can be precautions like bollards in the street, I suppose. But it was Bastille Day, a very high-profile day in France. They celebrate it in a way we don't celebrate St George's Day. So you would think the security service should have been perhaps more alert.
Well, your heart goes out to all those killed, the scores who've lost their lives, but it is very difficult when somebody has weaponised a vehicle, something you use all the time. It's akin to what happened at 9/11 and seizing aircraft. But trucks are everywhere. If you can drive, you could probably drive a truck like that. And I think you've got to stop people becoming terrorists in the first place. Whatever drives people to decide they're going to go and slaughter huge numbers of others, that's what you have to tackle, both in France and the wider world.
Yeah, as you say, there's nothing that you can do to stop a man commandeering a truck, but at the same time, perhaps there is something deeper in France.
How was he radicalised? And there is a huge problem in France, much more so than in this country. The Muslim community feels much more dispossessed, much more isolated. There's been much less integration, and there are some cities, apparently, where it's almost no-go areas where the Muslims are. That's a real problem, and that's something that's been building up over years and years and years.
Yeah, he's killed people of all faiths and none, including Muslims. Young, old, men, women, kids, a lot. Indiscriminate terror, but it's right. France is a very divided society. In Britain, we're a lot better with our community relations. Whatever the problems are, and let's remember, we've never really been free in Western Europe of terrorism since the Second World War. You've had the Baader-Meinhof gangs on continental Europe. Here in the United Kingdom, we had the Troubles in Northern Ireland. 3,600 people died. It's now a threat from radicalised Islamist jihadis. That has to be countered.
Just watch Le Pen, the National Front leader, just watch her. Wait a few days before she begins to exploit it for political gain.
Very troubling news from France, very troubling. Well, let's move on to events here in the UK, and the country has got a new Prime Minister. Theresa May moved into 10 Downing Street this week after accepting the Queen's invitation to become her 13th Prime Minister. So what does Britain's second ever female Prime Minister promise? Our political editor, Faisal Islam, has some more.
Theresa May, the 76th Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, arriving in Downing Street with a message of stability for the country and social justice for the people.
If you're just managing, I want to address you directly. I know you're working around the clock. I know you're doing your best, and I know that sometimes life can be a struggle. The government I lead will be driven not by the interests of the privileged few, but by yours. We will do everything we can to give you more control over your lives. As we leave the European Union, we will forge a bold, new, positive role for ourselves in the world. And we will make Britain a country that works not for a privileged few, but for every one of us. That will be the mission of the government I lead, and together we will build a better Britain.
The former Home Secretary, with husband Philip by her side, now begins the weighty task of delivering EU exit and reconnecting Westminster with a disillusioned public.
Love that little close-up there of her kitten-heel shoes. But what else do we know about Theresa May other than her fashion sense?
They are kitten-heeled shoes with steel toe caps, we know, because she is very, very tough. She's a tough politician, knows her own mind. She's not flashy. She won't be waving her arms around, coming out with lots of sound bites. And you couldn't actually fault a word of what she said in Downing Street. I just don't believe her record matches up to that rhetoric. And as that she's Britain's second woman Prime Minister, should remember the suffragette said it's deeds, not words. It's what she delivers. But I love the way the Queen, when she went round, held on to her bag. What does she think? She's going to nick it. I know Theresa May's from a state school, but I'm sure it's safe enough to put your bag down, Madge.
She's always got her
in her own home. Goes around with it in her own house.
She's always got her handbags, a bit like Mrs Thatcher. But I think she's had a fantastic flying start. Theresa May reeks of confidence and oozes self-assurance, and although I thought she looked a little nervous as she was walking up Downing Street, and why wouldn't she be? That speech she made was very good, and I think by her reshuffle, she's got rid of the Notting Hill set.
It was certainly decisive reshuffle.
Really decisive. The most brutal probably for 40 or 50 years.
I know, but if you look at her voting record, she voted for disability cuts, she voted for the bedroom tax, she's got the NHS on a stretcher, she's forcing housing associations to sell their homes. None of it matches up to her past record. Now, maybe she's going to change completely and become a socialist in number 10. Well, I doubt it, because she's a very, very traditional Tory.
Well, we've had a bit of scrutiny as well, not just of Theresa May, but also of her husband, who was I really enjoyed this piece in the Metro this week, actually. Theresa May's husband steals the show in sexy navy suit. Bit of a satire there on the way that Samantha Cameron experienced the media coverage.
Because he's the new Dennis Thatcher. Now, I'm not sure that he drinks anything like as much prodigious quantities of gin and tonic as Dennis Thatcher, but he will be compared to Dennis Thatcher whether he likes it or not. I don't think there's going to be too many comparisons of him with Samantha Cameron, because actually that was a rather boring grey suit, actually. Kevin's got a few of those.
But in truth, the best partners for a Prime Minister are seen but not heard, and they're there to support, and he doesn't seem to be a bloke who wants to become a public figure, because if he does, almost the only thing he can do is embarrass her at some point.
And a few people have had to change their Twitter profiles as well with all the reshuffling. Theresa May, Prime Minister and Conservatives leader. She must have been happy to do that one. Another person who may be slightly less happy to change his Twitter profile is David Cameron. He's now the former Prime Minister and MP for Witney. And then look at this. This is Theresa May.
Very good.
Another Theresa May.
Yeah, indeed.
I am a UK glamour model, not the Prime Minister.
Do you know, if people looked at that picture, they'd probably be able to work out she wasn't the Prime Minister?
I think there'll be no chance of any confusion between the two Theresa Mays.
Maybe she's trying to get a bit of publicity for herself in that way. Well, after making her first decision on what Britain would do in the case of a nuclear attack, Theresa May had other nuclear options to consider. Choosing her cabinet, Mrs May balanced Brexiteers with Remainers and promoted several women. But it was Boris Johnson's appointment as Foreign Secretary which got most attention, to the amusement of some.
And his replacement as Foreign Secretary has just been announced as Boris Johnson. How do you think this will affect, or if it will affect at all?
That says a lot, doesn't it? That says a lot. He laughed.
That realisation that you had to be serious.
Yeah, absolutely. But, you know, that's a fact that Boris Johnson is going to be the most famous foreign secretary in the world. We're not going to have...
Infamous.
Well,
not famous.
And of course
Infamous.
he's made lots of gaffes because he's been a columnist on the Daily Telegraph for years, and he's insulted just about every president and prime minister around the world, including one or two here, I would say. But actually, he's a big beast. He's a Brexiteer, and I think he'll shake up that rather staid Foreign Office. I think we could have quite a lot of fun with Boris.
Well, he's already been booed by the French in Britain. He got off to a good start there. And it is a high-stakes gamble because he is gaff-prone and he makes mistakes. If he's going to be Britain's face to the world, it could go horribly, horribly wrong. I've never found him a joke. You can laugh at him, but this is a serious job and a serious time. Serious issues facing the country. And she might have thought it's a bit of a laugh because I'll annoy Osborne and Johnson and Michael Gove by making him Foreign Secretary. But it's not funny.
But the big power in terms of foreign policy now is not with Boris Johnson. It's with David Davis, who's the Minister for Brexit. He's going to have his whole new ministry. His is the task to extricate us from the European Union. And Liam Fox, too, is the new International Trade Secretary. That will be a big part of this coming out of Brexit. That's where the real power is. Boris will deal with the Commonwealth and Asia and America a bit, but I think he's going to be more of a minister for cocktail parties.
You can see some of the kind of crucial cabinet appointments that she's made over there. Amber Rudd, interesting one. What did you make of her as Home Secretary?
I think it's a very smart move. I think she's very, very capable, although some Tories used to describe her as useless. I think she showed she was better than that. Your problem is getting your boss's old job. It was never good to be a Chancellor for Gordon Brown, and I suspect if you're going to be a Home Secretary for Theresa May, that's going to be tricky.
And we're seeing some of the women coming in up the Downing Street as well. She didn't go quite as far as some people thought, though, did she, with promoting women?
But I think that's quite encouraging in a way. She's done it on merit as opposed to thinking, I've got to have parity, because unlike the Labour Party, the Tory Party doesn't go in for false quotas, and that unlike the Labour Party, the Tory Party's had 2 women Prime Ministers elected on merit. And I think it's great to see somebody like Justine Greening as Education Secretary. She went to a comprehensive. The first Education Secretary, we think, whose entire education was at a comprehensive. Another first for the Tories.
But it shows you it's going to be a government still of spin. She may not be doing it herself, but people are spinning around it. When they spin out, there's going to be lots more women, and there's one more. Now, of course, you always want to appoint the best person for the job. But I'm not sure, again, going back to that Downing Street speech, if Philip Hammond, if financially dry Chancellor, is going to be giving people all those opportunities and an end to austerity that she was pretending. Let's see.
Well, there's certainly been a lot of activity outside Britain's most famous door, but let's have a look at our quiz of the week. And can you tell me what unusual creatures have been spotted in Downing Street? Not sure? We'll find out after the break. Welcome back to Week in Review with me, Sophie Ridge, and I'm joined by Kevin Maguire, the Associate Editor of the Daily Mirror, and Andrew Pearce, Consultant Editor of the Daily Mail. Well, before the break, we asked what creatures had been spotted at number 10. Anyone guess?
You said unusual creatures. Have any Labour MPs been spotted in number 10?
There's a lot of rats, but they're normally cabinet ministers. We've seen foxes before, ducks, squirrels. I can't.
Larry the cat.
A few cat fights between Larry and the Foreign Office cat. Well, you're wrong, I have to say. The answer is Pokemon.
Oh, yes, Dan.
A new mobile phone craze has taken hold of the UK with virtual monsters being caught all over the country. And Joe Tidy has got more.
You're not playing Pokemon Go by any chance, are you?
I am.
You are?
Yeah.
It's been described as a cultural phenomenon.
It's pretty decent, like everyone seems to be doing it right.
Yeah?
It's kind of weird, you see all these like...
Wherever you look, grown men and women are using their phones to find cartoon creatures. Hi mate, you playing Pokemon Go by any chance? You are?
Yeah.
I thought you might be. Are you playing Pokemon Go?
Yeah.
Hey, you playing Pokemon Go?
Yeah, I am actually.
I knew you were.
Pokemon Go is the first major augmented reality game. It mixes real-world maps with superimposed monsters. Players have to explore around them to catch them all using GPS. No previous app has ever caused this much hysteria. But there's every chance this creature catcher could end up being a short-term craze.
So, back to the office.
Back to the office.
All right. Nice to meet you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
have a good day.
Cheers. Good luck.
Thank you.
I don't get things like that, I'm
No,
afraid.
you wouldn't, would
no.
you?
Might not be pitched quite at you.
No.
I'd give you a Werther's original if I've got one.
As I've only got 2 apps on my phone. Well, I've only got 2 apps on my phone anyway.
Well, there is someone else who might have a bit more time to play Pokemon Go, though.
Indeed.
In his own words, he was the future once. David Cameron, after 6 years as Prime Minister and 11 years as leader of the Conservatives, has left office. His parting message was in his trademark style.
Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. Other than one meeting this afternoon with Her Majesty the Queen, the diary for the rest of my day is remarkably light. Well, first of all, let me say at the dispatch box how warmly I congratulate the Home Secretary on becoming leader of the Conservative Party. And when it comes to women Prime Ministers, I'm very pleased to be able to say pretty soon it's going to be 2-0. Nothing is really impossible if you put your mind to it. After all, as I once said, I was the future once.
So what do you think his legacy is going to be then?
Well, he'd like to talk about all sorts of things like stabilising the economy and austerity, but I'm afraid the legacy of David Cameron, it's a positive legacy, I think, is he's taken Britain out of the European Union. It was a referendum that he gambled on, it was a device to see off UKIP, and it destroyed his premiership. And as we've seen in the reshuffle, it's destroyed all his chums in government too. And that wasn't the legacy intended. And also, of course, we thought he was going to be the first Prime Minister in 40 years to leave Number 10 at a time of his choosing, and that didn't happen either.
Well, it is proof all political careers end in failure, because I see leaving the European Union as a negative, but nevertheless David Cameron wanted to stay in, and he did gamble, and he lost and over a little Tory issue. But I think he'll be remembered for that. He came in with a lot of promise, but really, his austerity programme squeezed growth. The actual recovery has been a lot slower and worse than it should have been. He hasn't brought down the deficit as fast as he said.
I can see you shaking your head here.
He's borrowed more debt, so he's put more debt up than all the other Labour governments put together. Yeah. So, no, he was a failure. There's no doubt he was a failure in Number 10. Gay marriage, good, but that's it. And the other thing is, it's stupid to say you can do anything you like if you put your mind to it. I'd love to play football and rugby for England. It's not going to happen.
Well, I would say this, more people in employment, more people in jobs than ever before. That's a pretty positive factor too.
That's a 0 hours contract, temporary working, and a low wage disease.
And either way, it seems that the thing that he will be remembered for most is losing that referendum, not the legacy, perhaps, that he wanted. Well, as the Tories change leaders, the Labour is continuing its ongoing battle over who should lead its party. This week it was decided that Jeremy Corbyn will be on the ballot paper for a future leadership contest, something the Shadow Chancellor was more than happy to hear as he rounded on Jeremy Corbyn's critics.
They've been plotting and conniving. The only good thing about it, as plotters, they're useless.
Is this appropriate behaviour from a politician at this level?
I think it was a statement of fact, but when you're calling for kinder politics, it's probably not the way to put it. But Labour's in a terrible place because it's turned in on itself, and I think Jeremy Corbyn should be on that ballot paper if he's challenged. But there's now 2 challengers, Angela Eagle and Owen Smith. May not be one. You would need one to try and beat him. And Labour's just turned in on itself, and it's tearing itself apart. And there's no guarantee it won't split, or it won't somehow just implode totally and be gone.
It's inconceivable to me, Sophie, that the Labour Party can go into this leadership contest and not have a woman on the ticket when the Tories have just chosen a second woman Prime Minister.
2-0, as David Cameron said.
Are there really no women capable on Labour's front bench or in the Parliamentary Party of being Prime Minister and leader of the opposition? If not, it's a terrible indictment on the party that brags and talks about inclusivity and all-women shortlist. It will be a disaster for them if Angela Eagle's not on that list. So why has Owen Smith come into the
race then if he isn't a female?
Well, I'm sure there's some ambition, but also he feels he's better able to challenge Corbyn because he shares a lot of the politics. He's very much anti-austerity. He wasn't around to vote for Iraq, although Angela Eagle's now said she apologises for that. You could imagine him as Prime Minister. But it'll be down to the members, and as things stand, you would think Corbyn would be...
But Angela
Eagle, woman she is, she does not look or sound like a Prime Minister.
So they have potentially a problem then, in your point of view. Well, let's have a look at your top newspaper stories of the week. Kevin first, and wolf whistling you've chosen.
Yeah, in Nottinghamshire, the Chief Constable has decided that misogyny will be a hate crime, like racism. People threatening women, including mobile phone pictures. I think the wolf whistling bit is... I'm not sure that really should be, but it shouldn't detract from a much wider concern that women are often targeted just because they are women. Now, all crimes involve hate, of course they do. It's there, but if it's just one group going after another group because of their gender, then it should be recorded properly.
I agree with Kevin for once, but the wolf whistling thing is just silly. It turns the whole thing into a subject of ridicule, actually. It's been ridiculed in all the newspapers, and they should back off that bit.
Because actually it risks making it feel as though the other things that potentially could be very damaging, very dangerous.
It makes them sound as trivial as... Because wolf whistling, it's not the end of the world, is it, if you're wolf whistling?
No, some women can feel threatened by it if it's sustained over a period of time. Often it's just utter thoughtlessness.
Have you ever been wolf whistled?
No, and I've never wolf whistled anybody either. Have you been wolf whistled, do you want to say?
Only once.
Well, there's one woman who probably has been wolf whistled at, which is your newspaper story of the week. What have you chosen?
Jennifer Aniston, who was a film star. She was in Cheers, wasn't she? Not Cheers. What was she? Was it Cheers?
Friends.
Friends. My grip of contemporary culture continues apace.
Not just contemporary.
But she's written an article complaining about how photographers are making her life a misery. They're objectifying her. But I think she complains too much, because my own newspaper this week pointed out that we found 8 front covers of glossy magazines where she appears in a variety of states of undress, promoting perfumes which are linked to her, promoting films, books. So you can't have it both ways, Jennifer.
But it is damaging, isn't it, for women who may not be in the public eye to see this kind of scrutiny on women's bodies?
But I'd blame Jennifer Aniston for playing along with that over the time.
She could have gone on those front covers and said, actually, I'm going to keep all my clothes on, but she didn't, because it wouldn't sell as many covers, and she knows that, and it wouldn't sell as many bottles of her perfume. So I think she's a 5-star hypocrite.
Let's move on now to your ups and downs of the week. And Kevin first. And James Corden is flying the British flag abroad.
Absolutely. He's been nominated for an Emmy for the Late Late Show in the States. He's actually one of those Brits who has work transferring across, and absolutely fantastic. He's up against Adele, I think. But a great look to him. But it's like what's his name, Oliver, John Oliver, on the Last Week Tonight too. Some Brits do make it in TV over there.
It's quite unusual. Let's send him up for doing his bit for Brits abroad. Yeah. And Kevin, you've picked bullfighting.
I have picked bullfighting. Victor Barrio, 29, a matador killed live on TV by a bull. But it's got... bullfighting is barbaric. I can't believe it goes on. And it's got more people saying it should be banned. And they damage the bulls. They injure them deliberately beforehand to try and make them unable.
And I hope they didn't kill that bull as a result of it.
You know what they're doing? They're killing the mother.
I heard that.
To end the bloodline. I mean, what's that all about? I mean, why?
Well, that's pretty unanimous. That's going down, bullfighting. Andrew.
Dear old Len. He's finally calling it a day. After 12 years, he's doing one more season as the judge in Strictly Come Dancing. And he'll be much missed, because he's quite good at the put-downs, and of course, he's a proper dancer himself. And now there's speculation that Anton Dubek or Brendan, one of the dancers, will take over.
Or Roy Hodgson or David Cameron. Put your own...
I think it should be Anne Widdecombe. She was such a star on Strictly Come Dancing,
be brilliant,
wasn't it?
Don't
you think?
That's not a bad suggestion.
Well, only right, then, to send Len Goodman up after his... dedication to Strictly Come Dancing. And what have you chosen to go down?
Well, be careful if you go to Cornwall, because a 3-year-old boy who was feeding a squirrel then discovered 6 squirrels jumped out of a bush and attacked him. He had serious hospital treatment. And in the same county, a 15-year-old girl having an ice cream on the seafront dive-bombed by a seagull and fell 15 feet.
Terrifying.
So, terrifying. Can be quite hazardous. I think she should have just handed over the ice cream.
Well, I don't think it comes along and says, excuse me. Right. It swoops down, I think, and it frightens you.
We're going to have to send it down.
Why are 3-year-olds feeding great squirrels anyway?
Because they're sweet.
Down they go.
Most of the time.
Oh, thank you. Don't forget, you can send us your nominations using the hashtag Week in Review. Well, thanks for joining us for our review of the week. We'll be back for more next week, but from now it's goodbye from them.
Goodbye.
And it's goodbye from me.